which case can I invite please Sir Anthony to come and sum up or marshal the arguments together for you, and then send our jury out. Is our jury bailiff on standby?
I am really.
Good. Yes. Yeah.
Members of the jury, let me first of all start by explaining our respective functions. I tell you what the law is and you accept it from me. You, on the other hand, are the deciders of the facts, and nothing that I may say about the facts should in any way influence you if you do not agree with it. The prosecution bring this case, and you may take the view that the prosecution have got to make you sure that the body in the cellar, the dismembered body which had been had lime put on it, was in fact the body of Dr. Crippen's wife. If you can't be sure of that, then the only verdict is one of not guilty. In 1910, the jury had been told to be satisfied beyond a reasonable doubt that the body was the body of Dr. Crippen's wife. Today we use a similar expression. We ask the jury to be sure before they convict of the guilt of the defendant. Mr. Cooper suggests to you that there is another verdict, that you could be sure that it was the body of Dr. Crippen's wife, but nonetheless that this was some form of accident in the course of administering drugs. I'm going to take the bold step of suggesting to you that there is no evidence at all of that possibility, and that the two verdicts are either guilty of murder or not guilty of murder. The case depends on circumstantial evidence. In other words, we don't have any one witness saying, I saw him do it, or anything like that. But what the prosecution rely on to make you sure is a whole series of circumstances from which they say you can draw the only conclusion, namely that the body in the basement was that of Dr. Crippen's wife. And the circumstantial evidence upon which the prosecution rely, you've heard, and I shall only summarize it. First of all, it seems to be agreed that the last time Dr. Crippen's wife was seen was the 31st of January at that party. Mr. Cooper says it doesn't necessarily mean that that was the last time she was seen alive, but we have no evidence at all from anyone that she was alive by the on the 1st of January. It's not, of course, for Dr. Crippen or for Mr. Cooper to give some alternative explanation as to what might have happened to her. On the other hand, because it's for the prosecution to prove that it was Dr. Crippen who killed her and put her body into the basement. But nonetheless, in deciding whether you are sure that he did that, then you're obviously entitled to take into account other possibilities which might explain her disappearance on that day. What it seems to be being suggested is that she must have eloped to the United States on, say, the 1st of January, and a man is named. As I say, Dr. Crippen doesn't have to prove that to be true, or even that it may be true, but nonetheless, when you're looking at the possibilities, then you can take that as one of the possibilities which you need to consider. What the prosecution say is that if one looks at all these circumstances, the only explanation for her not being seen after the 31st of January is that she was dead, and that Dr. Crippen was trying to hide that fact and trying to get some money by, for example, pawning the rings and the earrings and the brooch, and indeed in one case you've heard giving the brooch to Miss Lenerve. You will need to look carefully at what the prosecution say about the circumstances of the departure from Dr. Crippen and Ethel Leneve from this country. It's the prosecution's case that occurred very shortly after the police had revealed to him their inquiry, that they were concerned about Ethel Neve, and had told him that they were going to the house. That, say the prosecution, is another indicator of someone fleeing, fearing what was going to be discovered. It is accepted by Mr. Cooper that Dr. Crippen did not tell the truth when he told friends that she'd been taken ill in the United States, and he did not tell the truth when he told a friend shortly before his departure for the continent that his wife had died the day before. Of course, a person may lie for a number of reasons. It may lie in order to cover some other offence or some other matter. But the prosecution say that those lies are consistent with guilt because they show that he was trying to persuade people that his wife was no longer alive and had died in the United States following a trip there. Insofar as the body is concerned, you've heard the evidence available at the time that Dr. Spilsbury could not say whether it was a male or a female. We've been told that the body had been dismembered and the sexual organs removed. That, say the prosecution, is consistent with Dr. Crippen trying to cover his tracks, and the prosecution also rely on the presence of the drug hyoscine, which was found 2 grams of it in the body. Prosecution also point to the issue about the pajama cloth. If this was, the prosecution say, some person other than Ethel Leneve, whose body was found in the basement, how can it be, the prosecution say, that part of her the pajama, which reflected or was identical to a patterned pajama which he bought, how was that found on the body? And you've heard evidence about the hair. That, the prosecution say, was overwhelming evidence to make you sure that he was guilty of the murder. Now, Mr. Cooper comes along and puts before you evidence from two Americans involving DNA. If I can put this in square brackets, realistically in a trial, one would have heard the experts and one would have heard the experts from the other side. This would have been challenged, because if it was unchallenged, that's the end of the case. So all I can give you a direction in these circumstances about experts, that it's for a jury to determine whether they accept the evidence of experts. You've heard that these two experts have made their views clear, their opinions clear, that the body in the basement was that of a male, and if it was that of a male, then the only verdict, as I've directed you, has to be one of not guilty. Experts give evidence because the rest of us are not able to carry out DNA analyses of the kind that these experts are able to do. On the other hand, you as jurors are entitled to say to yourselves, we do not accept that evidence. It's entirely a matter for you. The prosecution didn't say, but they might have said to you, no wonder that it was found to be a male, because Dr. Spilsbury never wore gloves when he was handling the exhibits. That is the kind of thing that a prosecution might say in cross-examining the experts to suggest that there had been some contamination. But if at the end of the day, having heard what the experts in the United States have said, you have any doubts about the gender of the body in the basement, if it may be, even if only may be, that body is a male, then you would have to acquit in the way Lord Alveston, Chief Justice himself said in 1910, if it's a male, it's not guilty. Now, members of the jury, would you retire? Would you elect one amongst you to tell the court the verdict on your return, and please decide the case on the arguments that you've heard. You haven't heard strictly evidence, but you have heard a series of arguments, and you're really basing your decision on the arguments you have heard. It may help you, I do not know, to ask yourself what the verdict would have been before the DNA evidence, and then ask yourself what the verdict is after the DNA evidence. But that's a matter entirely for you and not for me. Thank you very much.
Could I just have some quiet for a moment, please? Could the jury bailiff please take the oath?
Thank you. I swear to keep the jury in some private and convenient space. I shall not cause anyone to speak to them, and shall not speak to them myself, except to ask them if they are agreed upon their verdict.
Thank you.
I remind you that the jury's verdict must at this stage be unanimous.
Amen. Thank you. Could the 12 jurors please follow the jury bailiff to the retiring room?